The explosion of interest in Julian of Norwich is no less than astounding. Here is a woman born in 1342, a medieval mystic, who experienced 16 incredible revelations of Christ on the cross, wrote them down in Middle English, and was virtually forgotten for almost 600 years. And then suddenly, at the beginning of the 20th century, and even more so now in the 21st century, she's become an overnight sensation, if you will. Julian is an extraordinary example of a woman who was not destined to be a theologian or a mystic or in any way different from other women. Yet through these revelations of Christ on the cross, she was so transformed that she had the courage to write and to speak her truth. And I think that's why so many women and men can relate to Julian today. I first heard about Julian many, many years ago, and I fell in love with her writings. For me, Julian's revelations are essentially the Gospels in a woman's voice. And for me, that was life-changing. I have given retreats on Julian. I have taught her mystical theology. I've written 2 books on her. The first one, Julian's Gospel, illuminating the life and revelations of Julian of Norwich. And most recently, from InterVarsity Press, An Explorer's Guide to Julian of Norwich. What is it about Julian of Norwich that captivates people now, in our troubled times? Perhaps her words, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Perhaps those words are the key to our need for Julian. Many people recite those words who've never heard of Julian, as well as many people who say them as a mantra in times of trouble and in times of realization. In my book, An Explorer's Guide to Julian of Norwich, I go into the 16 revelations in depth. I give you the background of Julian's life in the 14th century. Oh, what a tumultuous time it was. A time of the 100 Years' War, a time of starvation, a time of the Great Plague that killed eventually half the population of Europe. Yet here is a woman with all of the troubles in her time who is able to see to the divine level of transforming experience. She is not only a visionary, she's a seeker. And she asks the questions we're all still asking about sin, the nature of suffering, about meaning. Julian is someone who didn't come by these realizations easily. As we see in Explorer's Guide, she struggled, and yet she listened. She teaches us about contemplative prayer, the art of listening, if you will. And by doing so, she enables us to listen with her. And when she writes, it's almost like her voice speaking to us on parchment. And she becomes a mentor for our own spiritual journey. Thomas Merton absolutely loved Julian. He called her the greatest of all English mystical voices. And she's a mystic like no other. Most mystics and many medieval theologians of all kinds do not tell you anything about their struggle. But Julian, by turns, shows us her faith, her ardent love, her doubt, her struggle, her questions. Oh, questions. Here she is receiving illuminations from Christ on the cross, and she's daring to ask Christ questions, and that elicits his answers. So she gives us the courage to ask those same questions. And as I said, she teaches us how to listen in prayer. In An Explorer's Guide, not only do I go through the context of Julian's world and her history, her life, But and the Revelations, I also dig deeper in the last part of the book into her basic themes. As I said, her themes on prayer, on the ground of being, and on what all shall be well might mean in your life, how it can affect everything you do, living in that divine dimension, even as you are struggling in the human one. So what is the message of Julian for our time? I think it is God's unconditional love and mercy, the total lack of wrath or anger in God, the longing of the Sacred Heart to reach out and draw his beloved people in, her compassion for everyone, no judgmental attitudes. And finally, as she says herself, when she asked many years after the revelations, what is the meaning? What was the meaning of all these revelations? And she heard in prayer one word over and over: love. Love is the meaning of her revelations and of our lives. So there's a lot packed into An Explorer's Guide to Julian of Norwich. I would love to share it with you. Please go to my website, juliansvoice.com. There's a lot there about Julian, her background, and also schedule of retreats. And also join us if you're on Facebook. We have a wonderful group, over 3,000 strong and growing daily, of ardent devotees of Julian of Norwich from all over the world. A really beautiful group on Facebook. So I invite you to discover Julian if you already haven't done so, and to make her a very personal friend in your spiritual life.